I am not a virtuous queen. I never took a concubine for Shenqiu, nor did I bear him a royal heir. Thus, in his final moments of old age, he held my hand and said with a laugh, "You are so domineering. If there is a next life, I will definitely not marry you." I didn't take it seriously, thinking he was just joking, so I retorted, "Then I won't marry you either." But when I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Shenqiu was choosing his crown princess. The empress urged him, "If you fancy someone, you can simply present the jade ruyi to them." Shenqiu indeed walked towards me. Feeling smug, I smiled at his insincerity and reluctantly extended my hand. In the next moment, he brushed past me and handed the jade ruyi to the daughter of the grand historian, who was renowned throughout Jinling as the most virtuous and gentle lady. Standing behind me, my outstretched hand hung in midair. The smile that had just risen froze in place. Behind her, Song Yunhui, the daughter of the grand historian, also stared in astonishment at the jade ruyi presented before her. In disbelief, she uttered, "Your Highness." It wasn't just her, everyone present was equally stunned and bewildered by the sight. No other reason, because I, Chu Lingyao, and Shenqiu have long been known throughout Jinling as a bickering couple. This selection of the crown princess, though it claims to gather noble ladies from various prominent families, everyone knows it's merely a formality. Shenqiu will inevitably choose me, and it can only be me, he has openly declared. I grew up with Lingyao, and she promised to marry me, so she should have been my crown princess. Since the crown prince said so, the noble families no longer dared to set their sights on me. They simply said it was only a matter of time before I entered the Eastern Palace. In my previous life, that was indeed the case. Shenqiu did not hesitate to hand the jade ruyi belonging to the crown princess into my grasp. He even casually tossed away the sachet meant for selecting the crown prince's concubine. In my heart, I belong only to Lingyao, and I want only Lingyao. Since that is the case, there is no use keeping this sachet. After saying this, he even demanded a reward from me. Lingyao, did I do it right? I looked at his foolish appearance, feeling happy inside, but on the surface, I lifted my chin and snorted, "You know what's good for you. Otherwise, even if you gave me this jade ruyi, I wouldn't want it." Such domineering jealousy made Her Majesty the Empress shake her head repeatedly. Yet Shenqiu truly liked me too, and they were very good judges of character. I am indeed not a virtuous person. Starting as young spouses with Shenqiu, we eventually became the emperor and empress of a nation. I have never taken a concubine for Shenqiu, nor have I given birth to a royal heir for him. Throughout the court and the common people, there is no one who does not curse me as a jealous and wicked queen, bringing disaster to the country and its people. Even in the 5th year, when I caught the Empress Dowager sending several beauties to Shenqiu's palace, he was surrounded and flustered, and upon seeing me, he panicked. "Lingyao." I said nothing and closed the door. By the time he caught up, a letter of separation had already appeared on the desk. I simply stated, "I have no children. If you insist, then depose me. Let us separate peacefully. I will no longer be your wife." Naturally, I would not stubbornly prevent him from selecting concubines or taking consorts. That time, Shenqiu threw a huge tantrum. He tore up the divorce agreement, had a big argument with the Empress Dowager, and then dragged me by the hand in the court, cursing at those old fools. "What nonsense about a bewitching empress, it's just that we don't have a child. Lingyao and I have already adopted several from the royal clan. Is that enough?" He didn't know that on that day. As I turned my head and watched him angrily argue on my behalf, tears fell from my eyes. I vowed in my heart to be good to him for a lifetime. He held me tightly in his arms, his eyes red as he gritted his teeth and threatened. I said, "I only want you in this life. Why don't you believe me?" "Chu Lingyao, thinking of divorce, you're dreaming." This made me laugh through my tears as I scolded him. "Idiot." He didn't get angry either, just hugged me and hummed, "What does it matter if I'm a fool? I'm happy to be a fool in front of you." We spent decades like this, bickering and making noise. In the end, on his deathbed, as he recalled his life, he held my hand and laughed while scolding, "You are so domineering. If there is a next life, I will definitely not marry you." I didn't take it seriously, thinking he was just joking, and I retorted, "Then I won't marry you either." But when I opened my eyes again, It was the day Shen Qiu was choosing his crown princess. The empress urged him, "Whomever you fancy, you may simply present the jade ruyi to Shen Qiu." Indeed walked towards me. I felt smug, laughing at his insincerity, and reluctantly extended my hand. Then, in the next moment, he brushed past me and placed the jade ruyi into the hands of the daughter of the grand historian behind me, the most virtuous and gentle lady in all of Jinling 3. The empress was the first to react, her expression a mix of surprise and delight as she said, "You child, didn't you used to talk about Lingyao every day? Is this jade ruyi really not a joke? Are you truly giving it to Yunhui?" Of course, she was delighted. In her eyes, I was too domineering and not generous enough, never the candidate she had in mind for the crown princess. In contrast, the daughter of the grand historian, Song Yunhui, was renowned throughout Jinling for her virtuous and gentle reputation. Such a person as the crown princess, assisting Shen Qiu, would be a perfect match, but unfortunately, Shen Qiu had previously insisted on marrying me, and my family's influence was indeed prominent, so she had no choice but to accept it. Who would have thought that there would be such an unexpected delight today? Has her son had a change of heart? As soon as this question was raised, the scene fell silent. I stubbornly stood straight, listening quietly, the sound of the wind, the rustling of leaves, and, finally, from behind me came Shen Qiu's voice, speaking to the end. "Lingyao has a willful and stubborn nature, and though my son may like her, she is truly not suited for the position of crown princess. On the other hand, Miss Song is known for her virtue, generosity, and tolerance, making her the best candidate for crown princess." The empress listened and laughed. "You've never let Lingyao serve as crown princess, so how do you know she isn't suitable?" No, Shen Qiu knew, because when he said these words, that was when I knew he had been reborn as well. In my previous life, I was not only his crown princess but also his empress, and his evaluation of me was merely, "You are so domineering. If there is a next life, I will definitely not marry you." That wasn't a joke, so he really did regret it. I wanted to bite my lip to keep from making a sound. Just as in my past life, I endured so much slander without letting myself abandon Shen Qiu, but Shen Qiu abandoned me first, and the bitten lip was merely broken and bleeding, flesh torn and blood dripping. I suddenly remembered that in his later years, Shen Qiu became much more silent, often staring blankly at the royal descendants. He frequently disregarded advice and pored over the words written in the historian's records. Throughout his life, he was considered a wise ruler, recruiting talented individuals and loving his country and people. The only blemish was his unwavering protection of me, a childless and jealous queen. This left the position of crown prince vacant, forcing him to adopt a son from the royal clan to succeed him. Although the adopted prince I taught became wise and capable, he was still not of his own bloodline. Thus, among the string of praises and accolades, the glaring words "heirless" also appeared. So, in this second chance at life, is he trying to erase this sole blemish? But if the crown princess is Yunhui, then what about Ling Yao? The empress's tone was hesitant, considering how close Shen Qiu and I have been over the years, which has made no one in Jinling dare to propose marriage to me. If today Shen Qiu gives the position of crown princess to someone else and does not marry me, how will he explain it to my Chu family? Wouldn't that also ruin my entire life? The sound of Shen Qiu walking back came from behind. I saw him walk up to the tray in the palace attendant's hands, pause for a moment, and then turn around. This was the first time I had seen him again since my rebirth. He looked at me, surprised that, given my current temperament, I hadn't thrown a fit on the spot because he had given the jade ruyi to someone else. And as I looked at him, the sachet in his hand stung my eyes. Then, an overwhelming sense of bitterness and indignation surged within me. I found solace in the thought that Shen Qiu would regret his decision and would marry someone else as his crown princess. But I never expected him to demean me to such an extent. He actually wanted me to become his concubine. Seemingly stung by my indignant expression, he held the sachet and tried to placate me with a guilty conscience. "Lingyao, I will explain today's matter to you later. This sachet, it's a royal decree, Your Highness." I struggled to restrain myself and interrupted him. I understood the meaning behind his words. He intended to use the authority of the royal family to force me to lower my head and accept this sachet. In his eyes, I may be domineering and fiery now, but after all, I am just a naive 16-year-old girl. Even if I would be angry and upset because he didn't give me the jade ruby, considering my family, I couldn't refuse the sachet he handed over. He is preparing to act first and report later. First, he will marry someone else as the crown princess, then take me as his concubine, and later try to appease me properly. After all, at that age, I loved him deeply and would have understood his pain and forgiven him. But he miscalculated. He is not the same person he was back then, and naturally, I am not the same person I was either. After swallowing the metallic sweetness in my mouth, I finally took a step forward while he was still stunned, kneeling respectfully and bowing. Your Highness has chosen the crown princess of your heart, a joyous union. On behalf of the Chu family, I first congratulate Your Highness, offering my felicitations. May Your Highness and the crown princess share 100 years of harmony, with blessings and descendants extending far and wide, love as sweet as honey, and a lifetime of companionship until old age. Each word was spoken with clarity and resonance, ringing out distinctly, yet it completely separated the past rumors about him and me, and those youthful affections were also severed cleanly. 5. Lingyao, what do you mean by that? Shenqiu didn't expect me to say this, the sachet in his hand hanging in mid-air. Instead, the Empress raised an eyebrow. As the mistress of the 6 palaces and the mother of the nation, having experienced ups and downs, she naturally understood why I suddenly spoke up. She just didn't believe it, so her expression remained gentle. Lingyao, my child, what are you saying? Aren't you and Ak the closest? Why are you speaking so formally? She understood how deep my feelings for Shenqiu were, so she didn't believe it. She didn't believe that I would truly give up being a consort and abandon Shenqiu just because he married someone else as the crown princess. A clean and decisive break. Upon hearing this, I lowered my head, gazing at the stone slab before me, and said, precisely because my relationship with Your Highness is as deep as that of siblings. When my elder brother finds a good match, I, as his younger sister, naturally want to be the first to offer my congratulations. Siblings? What siblings? When have we ever been siblings? Shenqiu was completely flustered, listening to my words in disbelief. Almost he had handed the sachet to me now. However, I have framed our relationship as that of siblings. How could he possibly give away the sachet in his hand? Mother, he quickly snapped back to reality, turning sharply to the Empress and saying, Lingyao is angry with me again, speaking in a fit of temper. It shouldn't be taken seriously. I still need to select a crown prince consort, and I have already made up my mind. The person I choose is, I am not speaking out of anger. Before he could finish his words, I quickly interrupted him. I raised my head and happened to meet Shenqiu's gaze. Perhaps it was because my gaze was too calm, or perhaps the way I looked at him felt too familiar to him, but that was not the gaze a 16-year-old Chu Lingyao should have. A sense of foreboding washed over her. Along with an almost impossible possibility, Shenqiu suddenly felt a surge of panic. Did he dare to do this today because he was relying on the fact that I am only 16, at the age when I love him the most, so he was certain that even if I got angry, I wouldn't truly abandon him at that time. Although I was the crown prince's concubine, he would never treat me unfairly and would compensate me well. We could still be as we were in our previous life, perhaps even more perfect. But what he dared not imagine was if the me before him was not the 16-year-old me. But what about me at 60? At 60, Chu Lingyao dares to love and hate, never compromising for anyone. Once she makes up her mind, she never looks back. Once betrayed, she never forgives. And perhaps Shenqiu at 60 might joke, but Chu Lingyao at 60 never jokes. And what did we say back then? 6. You're so domineering. If there's a next life, I definitely won't marry you. Then I won't marry you either. Therefore, if he truly regrets not marrying me, I will absolutely not marry him either. 7. The prophecy from the previous life transcends time and space. Once again, it surfaces in Shenqiu's mind. He trembled. No, I continued. Your Highness has treated me like a sister all these years, and I am deeply grateful. Now that Your Highness is happily married, it is only natural for me, As your sister, to be the first to offer my congratulations. Stop talking. Shinkyu clutched the sachet tightly, as if desperately trying to hold something back, and hurried toward me, trying to press it into my hand, but it was too late. I feigned shyness on my face like a young girl in love, bashful and sweet. It's also a double blessing. My family had already arranged a marriage for me long ago, and I will be getting married soon. This time, I joined the selection out of mischief. Just to have fun and see the excitement. I looked up, forcing a smile as I gazed at Shinkyu's pale face, speaking softly and gently, Your Highness the Crown Prince, surely you won't hold it against my younger sister, will you? 8 plop. The sachet that was being forced into my hand ultimately fell to the ground because of my indifference. It was stained with dust and mud. You see, the ways of the world are just so unreasonable. For instance, some things, once done, cannot be undone. Some words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. On the talent show stage, under the watchful eyes of everyone, a single word, siblings, severed all possibilities between Shinkyu and me for this lifetime. He stared blankly at the sachet that had fallen to the ground. His face was completely blank. It seemed he hadn't expected that. Even though he had only dared to wrong me once out of sheer luck, I would truly disregard all past affection, unwilling to give him even the slightest chance, and act in the most absolute manner. All he could hear was the Empress's astonished question. Marriage? What marriage? He seemed to snap back to reality, staring at me intently, regaining some of his confidence. Indeed, we grew up together since childhood. When had he ever heard of me having a marriage arrangement? He must have been so flustered that he actually believed the angry words I said. He breathed a sigh of relief. Lingyao, you must not lie in front of Her Majesty. That is a grave offense. When have you ever been engaged? Could it be that you can conjure a man out of thin air? Regarding today's matter, I will explain it to you in detail later. The sachet, he bent down, preparing to pick it up and hand it back to me. Lying before the Empress and being exposed is a grave offense. If I were to refuse the Crown Prince's sachet once again, the consequences would be unimaginable. Such is the royal family. Serving the Emperor is like serving a tiger. But I did not lie. I replied calmly, Your Majesty has a noble memory. Perhaps forgetting that this humble subject has an elder brother, surnamed Xiao Ling, who is my adopted brother. Originally, my parents worried that I might suffer grievances after marrying into another family, so they intended to keep him by my side as a son-in-law. Thus, Xiao Ling was originally my childhood betrothed. 9. It's just that my parents never expected that as I grew up, I would fall in love with Shinkyu, and thus became the Crown Princess and eventually the Empress. Naturally, the old stories about my foster brother and me were treated as jokes and not mentioned again. So in my previous life, it was my foster brother who carried me out of the pavilion and escorted me to my wedding. When he learned I was to marry Shinkyu, he once asked me, do you truly love him, or is it because his status makes it hard to refuse? If it's the latter, Yao, even if it means facing mountains of swords and seas of fire, I won't let you marry. At that time, I was immersed in the sweetness with Shinkyu, only feeling that his gaze towards me was somewhat strange and weary. After all, from childhood to adulthood, my adoptive brother had always been steady and composed. No matter what I wanted or fought for, he was willing to give it to me if I ever felt wronged. It was even more serious. I would go to him without hesitation to complain, and he would take me to fight back. My parents used to tease me, you're just relying on a Ling to protect you, not afraid that one day he'll find you annoying too. No way. Hearing this, before I could say anything, Xiao Ling said earnestly, Yaro is innocent. Those people are just taking advantage of her kindness. What fault could she possibly have? I don't find her annoying at all. I only hope Yao doesn't see me as a burden. My adoptive brother, Xiao Ling, always worries that if he gets too close to me, I'll find him burdensome. Naturally, when I heard him ask if I truly liked the idea of voluntarily marrying Shinkyu, I just replied shyly and softly, brother, what are you saying? Of course, I like him, that's why I'm marrying him. I just thought he was overly concerned about me, but he didn't see that when I replied, he lowered his eyes, hiding his reddened eye sockets. Difficult, that's good, he smiled bitterly. If Yao likes it, then that's the best. 10. He carried me out of the pavilion and helped me into the bridal sedan. As he steadied me one last time, he said, Yao Yao, if one day he ever wrongs you, come find your brother, and I'll make him pay. That was the first time he referred to himself as my brother. Before, he had always avoided the topic, so much so that at first, I thought he didn't like me and didn't want to be my brother. But, brother, in the previous life, Shenqiu did not betray me, he betrayed me in this life. 11. I heard the name Xiao Ling. The scene fell completely silent, even the Empress opened her mouth, then sighed in the end. So it was him. How could I have forgotten? Xiao Ling, the ever-victorious general who had been away on campaigns for 3 years and had just returned triumphantly today, was now at the peak of his fame. It was during these 3 years of his absence that my relationship with Shenqiu grew closer and closer. Little did I know there was such a backstory. This is a good thing. The Empress finally breathed a sigh of relief, as this meant Shenqiu hadn't ruined my life, nor had he offended the Chu family. Her expression softened. Very well, as you say. A Q is as close to you as a brother and sister. Today, you were so bold as to run among the selected maidens, truly mischievous. But considering the Chu family's generations of loyalty, Lingyao, let this be the last time. My anxious heart finally settled, knowing it was done, and I immediately expressed my gratitude. I acknowledge my mistake, Your Majesty. Only Shenqiu, in disbelief, questioned the Empress. Mother, you know perfectly well that my feelings for Lingyao are not those of a brother, a Q. The Empress also raised her voice, her expression unchanged, but her tone carried a hint of warning. What are you doing? Haven't you already chosen the Crown Princess and are now selecting the Crown Prince's consorts? Why aren't you continuing? This was your own choice. As the heir to the throne, do you not understand that a ruler's word is not to be taken lightly? She felt a bit frustrated, as if she were disappointed in someone who failed to live up to expectations. Even though she didn't agree with Shenqiu choosing me as the Crown Princess, if Shenqiu truly liked me, she wouldn't have stood in the way. But didn't Shenqiu end up not choosing me since he had already made the decision and chosen the most suitable one? Who was he putting on this act of regret for now? Shenqiu was left speechless, his face instantly turning pale. Yes, a king's word is not to be taken lightly. He has already decided to abandon me and choose someone else, so he shouldn't blame me for leaving him no path to regret. He suddenly remembered that Xiao Ling in his previous life, he had held this man in high regard, for as the elder brother of the Empress, he had remained unmarried his entire life, stationed at the border, faithfully fulfilling his duties. Occasionally, there were only official reports, and even those contained just a very short personal letter. He once asked me what was written in the letter. I smiled and answered straightforwardly, my brother is concerned about us, asking if we are doing well. At that time, he only thought that Xiao Qing was truly loyal and overly straightforward, but now, upon further reflection, was his lifelong bachelorhood due to a lack of interest in settling down, or was it because he never married the one who held his heart? Was that thin sheet of paper a family letter, or was it a love letter? Shenqiu's face had never looked so grim before. He just realized, at that very moment, just as he handed over the jade ruby, he pushed me straight into the arms of another man who had been lying in wait, coveting me for years. At the same time, the selection process came to an end. A palace attendant came to report, Your Majesty, General Changsheng has arrived outside the palace, saying what? Shenqiu's voice was sharp. He says he's here to pick up Miss Chu, to take her home. 12. Outside the Phoenix Luan Palace came the clatter of armor, swords were surrendered, and the palace gates were pushed open. A tall, upright man stood there, covered in the dust of his journey. His steady, resolute eyes held an unyielding chill. He raised his gaze, he saw me among the selected maidens, my figure frail. As I turned my head gently, the autumn wind rises again, and our eyes meet. My eyes sting, and the tears I've held back for so long finally fall as I whisper with a choked sob, Brother, everything seems unchanged. Through 2 lifetimes of reincarnation, I am still the Yao Yao who runs to him with every grievance. The queen's voice carried a playful tone. So it's Xiao Qing who has arrived. Look, today Lingyao was being mischievous and actually sneaked into the group of potential consorts to play around. If a Q hadn't selected the crown princess and she hadn't offered her congratulations, I wouldn't have known that the two of you were already engaged. This truly is a double blessing." As these words fell, the silent and stern man nearly stumbled, a wave of relief washing over him. He had ridden through the night and finally hadn't arrived a moment too late. He hastily bowed and stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly before finally landing carefully on my shoulder. Then he turned to look at the Empress and Shen Qiu. His voice was also trembling. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I have come today to fetch my betrothed. Go home." 13 That's not the case in the previous life. He had already seen the jade ruyi that Shen Qiu placed in my hand when he arrived on the battlefield. The young general who killed without blinking was nearly exhausted at that moment, his face as pale as paper. In response to the Empress's inquiry and my concern, he could only kneel mechanically and perform the ritual. Then he softly and with difficulty chimed in. "Yes, it's a joyous occasion." He said he had suffered severe internal injuries on the battlefield and needed to rest quietly. Therefore, he never let me see him even once before I got married. The next time we met was on my wedding day. He had grown much thinner, and when he saw me in my red bridal gown, adorned with a phoenix crown and embroidered robes, I smiled and called out to him, "Brother." He remained silent, offering only a faint, wooden smile as he bent down to carry me on his back. The journey was neither too short nor too long, yet with each step he took, he walked steadily and slowly as if treading on a mountain of knives and a sea of fire. My voice was filled with concern, and I didn't forget his injury, asking, "Has brother's wound healed?" I listened to father and mother and didn't disturb brother's rest, but I sent him a lot of medicine. The footsteps stopped, and the bright red bridal sedan was right in front of me, but I couldn't see his face. Therefore, I could only listen to him say, bleeding profusely, "The scars fester and will never heal." 14 Inside the carriage for a long moment, I couldn't recover from the word wife, staring in astonishment at Xiao Ling, who had always been composed and dignified, sitting beside me muttering, "Brother," he responded, "Did I cause trouble for you?" I never expected that after being reborn, Shen Qiu would regret it, but instead of letting me go and leaving each other alone instead, he wanted me to be the crown prince's concubine, to be a mere consort. He even wanted to trap me for the rest of my life with no other choice. I had to bring up the past. This is the first reason. Second, in his previous life, Xiao Ling had never been interested in love, had no sweetheart, and never married. By saying this, I wouldn't be interfering with his marriage prospects. It's just for show, I quickly explained. Once this matter is over, we'll separate. By then, as the crown prince, Shen Qiu would no longer be able to marry a woman who had already been divorced because what he values most is his reputation for virtue. I said, I didn't know he would humiliate me like this, but now that these words have reached the Empress's ears, there's no turning back. So, brother, I'm sorry, my voice suddenly cut off, because Xiao Ling lowered his head, his lips pressed against mine. The treasure that had been endured for years and nearly stolen by others was regained. The overflowing emotions finally surged forth. I widened my eyes in disbelief. He carefully cradled my face and wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. Suppression. I was always afraid of scaring you before. I thought about earning many military merits so that you wouldn't have to suffer. But Yao Yao, it was so close. So close that you were almost taken away from me. After surviving a disaster and finally getting you back, you say we should just pretend. His fingertip gently stroked my brow, each word spoken with intense ferocity. Dream on. 15 Thump. Thump. The carriage jolted and swayed. Someone's heart was pounding like thunder. He was pushed away by me with great force. I stood there in a daze, utterly bewildered. I sat there blankly, staring at him. He let me look as if he had resigned himself to fate, resigned to fate, waiting for the sword hanging in my heart to fall, smiling at me. Yet it's filled with bitterness, as if the bold and reckless act just now was done by me, full of grievances. I will not divorce, he said. Yao Yao, I will not divorce. It's fine if you don't like me. And it's not a pity if you treat my sincerity as worthless, but I will not divorce. Who would have thought that the ever-disciplined and proper general could also act shamelessly, stubbornly insisting, I would rather die than separate. It took me a long moment to snap out of my daze. I looked up, both embarrassed and anxious. When did we ever get married? He hasn't even married yet, and is already thinking about after the wedding. Crazy, insane. For a moment I never knew whether it was more heartbreaking to be suddenly reborn and have my once loving husband from my previous life regret making me his concubine, or to be more shocked by the obsessive confessions of love from my always upright and respected foster brother. Around that time, they all went mad. 16. My parents shared the same sentiment when they learned that Shinkyu had given the Jade Ruyi to someone else during the selection process, yet still tried to force me to accept the sachet. My father was furious, going too far. It was him who clung to Ling Yao back then, and it was also him who wanted my Chu family's daughter to be a concubine during the selection. You must know that even His Majesty is aware that my Chu family has been loyal and righteous for generations. In this generation, there is only one daughter, and we intended to have her removed from the selection list. So why did I go after all? It was Shinkyu. Shinkyu came to the Chu family to plead. He promised my parents that he would have only me in this lifetime, begging them to relent and allow me to participate in the selection. My parents, seeing his devotion and knowing that we were deeply in love, reluctantly agreed. And now, look at this, he has gone back on his word, breaking promises aside. With the Chu family in such a state, who would care about a crown princess if he doesn't marry me? He can just let me return. They have plenty of arrangements to ensure my life is smooth and worry-free. But what about Shinkyu? He wants both the bear's paw and the fish paste. Daydreaming at this thought, they were reminded of Xiao Ling again. Opening their mouths, they looked at me and asked, Ling Yao, what does Ling have to say about this matter? After sending me back to the mansion, Xiao Ling was summoned by His Majesty. He came and went in a hurry. It was only then that I learned he had received a letter from my parents mentioning my intention to participate in the imperial consort selection, which prompted him to rush back to Jinling ahead of schedule. And so it seemed to my parents. All I saw was my equally bewildered self looking up, answering in confusion. He said he wants to marry me, but such matters shouldn't be spoken of by a girl like me. He told me to wait for him. My parents. 17. This wait lasted until the evening palace banquet. With the great victory at the border, Xiao Ling returned to Jinling to report on his duties, and the emperor was overjoyed to celebrate. He hosted a banquet for all the ministers. Naturally, I accompanied my mother into the palace. On the way, my mother accidentally soiled her dress and went to change. A palace maid stepped forward. Allow this servant to lead the way for Miss Chu. I had no suspicions, but noticed the path growing more and more remote according to the memories of my past life. This should be the side hall of the Empress. Thinking of something, I almost immediately turned to leave, but under the tree in front of the hall, someone was already standing. The palace attendants had already withdrawn at some unknown time. Shinkyu looked at me and said softly, Ling Yao. 18. My gaze turned cold. I took 2 steps back, creating as much distance as possible. Your Highness, what do you mean by this? My mother will be worried if she doesn't see me for long, so I shall take my leave now. Seeing that I was about to leave, he hurriedly stepped forward, his eyes filled with pain. Must you distance yourself from me to such an extent? What else? I sneered. Your Highness already has a suitable match, and I too have a betrothed husband. Now, as a man and a woman alone in the same room, if others were to see us, wouldn't it be highly improper? You are not allowed to mention him. Speaking of her fiancé, Shinkyu became furious. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing, with impure intentions. He never married in his life, yet he dares to covet you. If I had known in my previous life, if I had known, what could your Highness have done? Even if you knew, in truth, he did nothing wrong, did he? As a subject, he was loyal to the monarch and loved his country. As a brother, he was self-disciplined and adhered to propriety. Even now, the fact that I can be with him is all thanks to your Highness's magnanimity, isn't it? So what is he in a hurry about? He chose them all. So why is he still not satisfied? Shinkyu finally softened his attitude. Having been husband and wife for a lifetime, he whispered, Ling Yao, I've followed your wishes my whole life. Can't you just let me have my way this once? I admit, making you the crown prince's Liangdi is a slight to you, but the Song family's daughter is magnanimous and virtuous. As the crown princess, She certainly won't treat you unfairly. Moreover, with me here, you are only nominally the Liangdi. Your treatment will be the same as that of the crown princess. Wasn't our biggest regret in our previous life not having any children? You also complained to me about how exhausting it was to be the crown princess and then the empress. This time, let someone else take on that role for you. You can simply enjoy yourself. If any of the children happen to catch your fancy, I can even have them adopted under your care. We can still be just like before. Slap. Shen Qiu's unfinished words were cut off by a slap from me. This is an extraordinary act of disrespect, but I was already furious, using all my strength to slap him hard across the face. Shen Qiu, you are shameless. Does he even know what his saying, marrying a wife and taking concubines, making an innocent woman his virtuous helpmate, having children, only to let me come and pluck the fruit, snatch the child away? He humiliated me, and he humiliated another innocent woman. A red palm print appeared on Shen Qiu's face. His head turned to the side as if meeting him for the first time. I angrily said, "You want an heir, so why didn't you divorce me or depose me as empress in our past life? You want an heir, so why did you marry a virtuous woman in this life, only to make me a concubine and humiliate her? Shen Qiu, do you have even a shred of respect for me or for her? But this is the best solution for everyone." Shen Qiu argued with me. "I simply don't love her, but I won't treat her poorly either. Living under her stepmother's control, what could she possibly be dissatisfied with? Having the opportunity to become the crown princess." Ling Yao, he grabbed my hand, trying to be patient. "Just let me have my way this once. Haven't I always indulged you in your willfulness before, even when you couldn't bear children? Didn't I still refuse to take concubines?" In the end, he still couldn't let go of not having a child of his own bloodline, even if the adopted child is equally filial and virtuous. But it's not the same. In my previous life, I was the ruler of the world, a wise and beloved monarch to the people, recruiting talents and expanding territories. Yet I had this one flaw that prevented me from achieving perfection. So in this life, I strive for perfection in every way. What's wrong with that? Why must you keep fixating on this one point? That's you begging me. I suddenly spoke up. He stopped. I shook him off and slapped him on the other cheek. The searing pain jolted him awake a bit. When I looked over again, my eyes were filled with nothing but coldness. "Shen Qiu, it was you who begged me to become the crown princess and empress, and it was also you who pleaded with me not to leave when I wanted a divorce. Since then, the so-called stain you speak of has been a burden of several times the criticism on my shoulders, so I have never owed you anything." Indeed, his only flaw was having no heirs and being criticized for favoring that jealous empress. Yet what I bear is the overwhelming condemnation of being a femme fatale and a bewitching queen who led the nation astray. You claim every word and action is a compromise for my sake. But have you ever seen the scorn I've endured for you? Now that we are reborn, if you regret and no longer wish to marry me, I won't blame you. After all, marriage is a matter of mutual consent. Would I, Chu Lingyao, force someone against their will? But Shen Qiu, the one thing you should never have done is repeatedly humiliate me. I will not be a concubine, nor will I allow my husband to take one. I cannot bear to compete with another innocent woman for a man's love, nor should any woman be treated so lightly. These two slaps, if you still remember the marital bond from our past life, then they are the punishment from the Chu Lingyao of that life to her husband. If you do not remember and wish to punish me for my crime, I would rather go to prison. I pushed him away and walked towards the outside of the hall, catching a glimpse of a flustered skirt hem disappearing into the grass. I paid it little mind and did not look back. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, I have been away for too long, and my mother must truly be worried. Therefore, I must take my leave." Behind, Shen Qiu's unwilling voice came. "Then do you think marrying Xiao Ling would be any better than me? He's just a military officer. How much dignity can he give you? 19, not much at all." It was by using a lifetime of military achievements, at the palace banquet, in full view of everyone, to exchange for His Majesty's decree of marriage, to marry into my Chu family, and to request an official title for me. When Xiao Ling knelt in the hall, asking His Majesty for these rewards, everyone around froze. At this palace banquet, the Empress sat with the future crown princess. The emperor was beaming with joy. I sat beside my mother, able to see Xiao Ling at the men's banquet table. Crown Prince Shenqiu arrived late, having likely applied ice and some powder to cover the palm print. Silence stared fixedly in the direction of Xiao Ling. At this moment, the emperor was greatly pleased. This time, Minister Xiao has achieved remarkable military feats and is a great contributor to our dynasty, rewarding him with 1,000 gold and a generous salary would be too vulgar. Why not let Xiao Ling decide for himself? Whatever you desire, I shall grant it to you. As the words fell, the queen picked up a pastry, glancing down at her son with lowered eyes. My mother also held my hand, seemingly lost in thought. Xiao Ling stepped forward, knelt respectfully, and declined with a humble excuse. He was then urged by the emperor just now, word by word. He said, "If that is the case, I do indeed have one request." "Oh, what is it?" The emperor was curious, yet also somewhat suspicious. He said, "I was originally an orphan, saved by General Chu's great kindness. He took me in as his own, raised me in the Chu household as an adopted son, and received the care of the young lady and the madam. I never lacked for food, clothing, or necessities, which gave me the opportunity to achieve today's merits. This kindness is as weighty as a mountain, and I have no way to repay it. I only beg your majesty to grant me permission to marry into the Chu family and bestow upon my wife an official title. The emperor's grace is vast and boundless, and I am endlessly grateful." Bang! The sound of a melon or fruit being accidentally pulled and knocked over was heard. Everyone looked over to see the crown prince in a state of disarray. With juice staining the hem of his robe, the queen sighed and shook her head. Everyone present was shocked. After all, Xiao Ling was now a young general with a promising future. If he wanted to marry, even a princess would not be out of the question. Moreover, even if it were out of gratitude, marrying me would be acceptable. But that's not the case. He is to be married into the family, married into my Chu family, to be my son-in-law. Doesn't that mean if I'm ever unhappy in the future, no matter how high his status or power, I can still divorce him? I felt my mother's grip on my hand loosen, a satisfied and relieved smile appearing at the corner of her mouth, but I was still in a daze watching Xiao Ling's retreating figure. I was reminded of the time he sent me home and was summoned away by His Majesty. For my shock and confusion, he just touched my face and said, "Yao Yao, wait for me." I waited. 20. The Son of Heaven on the high throne paused for a moment, then burst into laughter, teasing with delight. After all, he was the Son of Heaven, and he harbored some suspicion. This time, asking him what reward he wanted was merely a way to test and caution him. It was originally thought that Xiao Ling might ask for high-ranking positions and generous salaries, or become so elated that he forgot himself. But unexpectedly, he actually begged to become the son-in-law of the Chu family's daughter. "What kind of request is that, Father?" Ling Yao, Shenqiu urgently tried to say something. The emperor had already waved his hand. "Chu Qing's only daughter is intelligent, clever, lively, and pleasing, a good match indeed. Since you have come to me with this request, I grant it. As for the title of nobility, it is justified by the merits of my Chu family and Xiao Ling's military achievements. It is only natural that it be given to me. This is not an overstep. Therefore, Shenqiu should no longer call me Ling Yao. He should address me as the second-rank noblewoman personally conferred by the emperor, the wife of a meritorious official, Lady of Ning'an County. 21. Shenqiu was utterly defeated. Nothing can be undone with this imperial decree of marriage. His father, the emperor, is pressing down. Even if he ascends the throne in the future, he cannot defy the will of the late emperor yet. The emperor was pleased and set the day of my marriage to Xiao Ling on the same day as his wedding to the crown princess. It is indeed a double blessing. Before the wedding, I also once saw him with that future crown princess. It was Xiao Ling and I who went to the jewelry shop to pick out hairpins. Shenqiu accompanied the future crown princess on their outing. He saw that I was lost in thought. I, in turn, looked at that crown princess. The daughter of the grand historian, Song Jiayunui, was a woman of great virtue and reputation, who remained composed and at ease despite her future husband's aloofness. Meeting my gaze, he also gave a faint, friendly smile and nodded. I averted my eyes as Xiao Ling tucked a jade hairpin into my hair. The shopkeeper, with keen perception, praised, "Madam is so beautiful that even this jade hairpin pales in comparison on you." I felt embarrassed by the praise, and to make matters worse, Xiao Ling nodded seriously. "Indeed, it pales in comparison." The shopkeeper. This person couldn't understand polite remarks. I glared at him, not understanding why someone usually so steady could have such a childish side, and even when glared at, he didn't understand the meaning, lowering his head thinking I wanted to whisper something, earnestly. So stupid." I stood on tiptoe and kissed his earlobe. I left the silver and bought the hairpin amidst the shopkeeper's congratulations. I let out a startled cry as Xiao Ling lifted me up, burying my face in his chest in embarrassment. Too shy to face anyone. It was early spring, just after winter, a time when all things come back to life, truly a splendid season. Those around us, seeing the young man's first stirrings of love, all let out kind-hearted laughter. Xiao Ling held me like this, as triumphant as if he had won a great victory, his face beaming with joy, passing by shops, passing by carriages and horses, passing by but not passers-by. The lonely Shenqiu 22. This wedding was held with great pomp as it was a marriage bestowed by the emperor, and the groom was a rising star of the court. Naturally, it was also lively. It happened that the crown prince was also marrying his crown princess. The two joyous events were celebrated together, and for a time, the streets of Jinling were filled with red confetti, brimming with happiness. Just as the auspicious hour arrived, the couple bowed to each other and entered the bridal chamber. Xiao Ling held me close, as if afraid I would be snatched away. He drove out all the colleagues who were making a ruckus in the bridal chamber. "Do not disturb my peace then." He carefully lifted the bridal veil, just in time to see me adorned with rouge and powder, wearing a phoenix crown and a resplendent wedding gown. I smiled at him. He took a sharp breath, his eyes growing slightly moist. Holding me in his arms, he buried his face in the crook of my neck and whispered softly. I thought I was almost too late, that I had nearly lost Yao Yao. He always believed that if he were to marry me, it must be with military honors to his name and an 8-carriage procession. Only then would he be worthy. So he endured the pain of parting for 3 years, fighting bravely on the battlefield, killing enemies with valor. Yet it gave others an opportunity to take advantage. Fortunately, it's not too late. My neck was tickled by him, and I mumbled drowsily, "Brother." Immediately, a broad palm covered my eyes, and I sighed, "Yao Yao, you should call me husband, husband." The dragon and phoenix candles flickered, and red silk curtains hung down. The room was filled with fragrance. 23. I left Jinling with Xiao Ling 3 months later. The emperor, fearing unrest from the southern barbarians, ordered troops to be stationed there without withdrawal. This was a strict decree that even the succeeding princes could not alter. Thus, a capable general like Xiao Ling was chosen. All right, my parents are getting on in years, so upon hearing this, they packed their belongings, and we decided to move the entire family away to live out their remaining years in peace. On the day we left, a light rain fell from the sky. It was misty and hazy. The crown prince and crown princess bid farewell to the emperor on behalf of the Son of Heaven. Both were newlyweds. Shenqiu seemed to grow even more silent, while the crown princess spoke many comforting words with grace. Xiao Ling and I expressed our gratitude one by one. Then he mounted the horse and boarded the carriage. The march proceeded. Slowly the wind rose again. It lifted the cloth curtain. Through the rustling wind and rain, Shenqiu and I gazed at each other, but all I could see was a blur. 24. I thought we would never meet again, but 3 years later the emperor passed away, and a new emperor ascended the throne. I returned to Jinling with Xiao Ling to report on my duties. At that time, the crown princess, who had already become the empress, summoned me for an audience. She still maintained her dignified and graceful demeanor. Though she had grown considerably fuller, it seemed she was doing quite well. In recent years, she has become a capable assistant by Shenqiu's side, managing household affairs with kindness and generosity, earning praise from everyone for her magnanimous demeanor. She never hesitates to select concubines or consorts for her husband. Upon seeing me, she brewed a cup of tea for me. She said, "I know you originally led me to witness that scene out of good intentions, not wanting me to be deceived, in both reason and sentiment. I should thank you. In this life, I did not become the empress, avoiding much of the criticism, living freely in the south. I smiled and shook my head upon hearing this. But your highness still married him, didn't you? Back then, Shinkyu's methods were truly despicable. Before being taken to the side hall by the palace attendants, I had my maid lead Song Yunhui to follow. Therefore, she heard the conversation between Shinkyu and me that day, yet she still married. As your majesty said, I was living under my stepmother's control, and becoming the crown princess was the best path I could take, so even if I knew, I was willing. After all, who doesn't love a life of luxury and comfort? As for whether Shinkyu loves her or not, that's not important. She doesn't love Shinkyu either. Does she? That's why, over the years, she has selected concubines for Shinkyu without any hesitation and carried out her duties as the empress step by step. Even when Shinkyu wanted to see me, she thoughtfully made the arrangements. The bead curtain was drawn aside. I looked up to see Shinkyu standing there. Upon seeing me again, his face was filled with emotion. Ling Yao, 25, the empress spoke. Your majesty has come at just the right time. I was just catching up with the lady of Ningen County. She held my hand, neither letting go nor stepping back. Shinkyu wanted to see me, and she couldn't refuse, but she stayed, genuinely and diligently protecting my safety. I understood her kindness and helplessness, patted the back of her hand, stood up, and bowed. Your humble subject's wife pays respects to your majesty. The words your humble subject's wife made Shinkyu pause in his steps forward, bitter smile. Ling Yao, why must you be like this? Piercing my heart. Time has passed, and what cannot be returned to will never return. I know Shinkyu's nature. What he values most is his reputation as a virtuous ruler. Moreover, the Empress Dowager is still alive now. For either reason, he will not do anything more to me. Just looking at my more radiant appearance compared to my previous life, I felt both unwilling and pained. He truly never considered taking a concubine and has taken such good care of you. Even when faced with the threat of a death penalty, he refused to let go. Death penalty. I suddenly looked up, urgently. What capital crime? What are you going to do to him? Xiao Ling, he clearly did nothing wrong. Is Shinkyu going to take his anger out on him? Because of me, my heart was filled with anxiety. And I even forgot about propriety. Seeing Shinkyu not responding, I ran out amidst the queen's startled cry. I brushed past him without a trace of hesitation. Instead, I collided with a solid wall of flesh. The man carefully held me, both surprised and pained, sighing, running so fast. What if you get hurt? I saw clearly who was holding me, my eyes reddening. Xiao Ling. Tears kept falling uncontrollably, and he was heartbroken, gently wiping them away for me. Don't cry. Did you bump and hurt yourself, or did I spend too long reporting to His Majesty, and you got impatient waiting? Let me see if your forehead is injured. He spoke softly, but I suddenly realized Shinkyu was deceiving me. He didn't actually give Xiao Ling a hard time. I turned to look back. Shinkyu was desolate, yet couldn't muster even a faint smile. Ling Yao, only now have I given up hope. You married him not because of me, at least not anymore, but truly, I had fallen in love with Xiao Ling. My vision went dark. My body went limp, and I collapsed. Panicked voices filled the air. When I woke up again, by the time I was lying on the bed, I heard the imperial physician reporting to the three of them. Your Majesty, Your Highness, General Xiao, there is no need to worry. The lady is merely 2 months pregnant and has been exhausted from the long journey to Jinling, which is why she is feeling a bit weak. Bang! The sound of a vase being accidentally knocked over and shattered echoed through the room. There was surprise, understanding, and disbelief all at once. Pregnant, 26, even I was stunned because of my past life. I only thought my body was incapable of conceiving, but now I've been told I'm pregnant. So in that past life, who was it that couldn't bear children? The answer is obvious. After 3 years of marriage, the new emperor still had no heirs despite having concubines. Shinkyu was stunned on the spot, watching as I was joyfully embraced by Xiao Ling. The empress offered her congratulations, yet I felt like an outsider. Seeing the smile at the corner of my mouth, everything seemed harmonious. What did he do? He subjected my past self to endless criticism and scorn. He even harbored a trace of resentment toward me in his heart. So in this life, he abandoned me to marry another. severing the bond between us. He thought he was setting things right by doing so, but at the end of the story it turns out he was the one who couldn't have children. 27 The news that the new emperor had a hidden ailment eventually spread. It wasn't because of me, but in the previous life, since I was his only empress, everyone naturally blamed me for the inability to have children. But in this life, the new empress has always been generous and never opposed his taking concubines. Yet the imperial harem still saw no children born. As time passed, naturally everyone knew the reason. Those veiled mockeries spread among the common people. It resembles the criticism I endured in my past life, only this time it all falls upon Shun Q's head. He simply couldn't withstand the blow, or perhaps he had long been burdened with pent-up emotions, which is why his health was often troubled. So it wasn't until 7 years later that I heard news of him again. The sorrowful tidings of the emperor's sudden death, and the early death of the emperor, was a major event. Fortunately, the empress had long since adopted a son from the imperial clan and raised him under her wing, providing excellent guidance. Thus, even though he was still young and ascended the throne early, with the Empress Dowager and the Grand Empress Dowager overseeing state affairs from behind the curtain, no major issues arose by then. My daughter was already 6 years old. Seeing me lost in thought for a moment, she took my hand and asked innocently, "Mother knew the late emperor?" I snapped back to reality, shook my head, and said in a flat tone, "Not at all," scared her instead. "Have you finished your homework? Your father is coming home today, and if you don't pass his inspection, you'll get a spanking." She immediately pouted, covered her head, and ran off. Just as Xiao Ling dismounted and returned home holding a bunch of wildflowers, he walked toward me. "Darling, the flowers on South Mountain have bloomed again. Look, aren't the ones I picked for you beautiful? The flowers have bloomed." I looked over. Another spring has arrived. Everything is full of life and lush green. It's a good sign. So, with a smile, he said, "Looks good." After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. If you hadn't gotten into the wrong bridal sedan, Wanna would have been my wife long ago. You've ruined both Wanna's life and mine. Exhausted and gravely ill, I listened in shock to my husband's icy words. 6 years of marriage to Zhao Huairan, 6 years of supporting him to become Yang Kingdom's foremost imperial merchant, couldn't outweigh his regret over failing to marry his beloved 6 years ago. I, who should have married into the Marquis's household, found myself in the wrong bridal sedan by cruel fate, forced to wed Zhao Huairan, a mere merchant's son, from being a nobleman's wife to becoming a merchant's spouse. I had never once felt regret. Who would have thought Zhao Huairan harbored resentment all along? How utterly laughable. A mouthful of blood spewed forth, severing my last thread of life. The October chill in Yangjing was particularly biting. With patches of unmelted snow still clinging to the ground, Lin residence, young mistress, the Marquis of Shuangping's household has come to propose marriage. The maidservant Lanxiang came running in with a face full of joy. I opened my eyes. I had actually been reborn 6 years in the past. This year I was 17, and the Marquis of Shuangping's household had finally come to the Lin family to propose marriage to me. Wang Lingrui, the heir of Marquis Shuangping's household, is my betrothed by prenatal arrangement. Back then, my birth mother Lady Pei and the Marchioness of Xianping were praying for blessings at Daxing Temple when they encountered bandits. My mother saved the Marchioness' life, which led to this marriage alliance. Otherwise, how could the daughter of a minor 4th-rank Ministry of Revenue official like the Lin family ever marry into a Marquis household? Lan Xiang came rushing in, panting heavily. As I looked at her youthful face, I never could have imagined that in my past life, this maid who was like a sister to me would alter my fate. I forcefully suppressed the resentment in my heart, knowing now was not yet the time to punish her. The matter of the arranged marriage swap in my past life couldn't have been accomplished by her alone. I won't let any of those involved get away with it. What date did the Marquis's household set for the wedding? It's the 16th day of the 12th lunar month, but Madam suggested moving it to the 18th so the young Miss could marry on the same day as second young Miss. Hearing this, I understood clearly. This was indeed orchestrated by my stepmother, Madam Han. My birth mother passed away from illness a year after I was born, and my father quickly remarried a merchant's daughter, Madame Han, as his second wife. After Madame Han entered our household, she gave birth to a daughter, Lin Qingwan. Although Lin Qingwan was also a legitimate daughter of the Lin household, her mother Madame Han came from merchant origins, a lowly status, making it difficult to find a suitable match for her among noble families in the capital. On Lin Qingwan's 15th birthday, the year she came of age, the Zhao family, imperial merchants from the outskirts of the capital, came to propose marriage between their son, Zhao Huairan, and Lin Qingwan. After careful consideration, the Lin family agreed to the marriage between Lin Qingwan and Zhao Huairan, yet unexpectedly, 2 months later, the Marquis of Xuanping's household, who were originally supposed to propose marriage next year, also came forward with a proposal for me ahead of time, and so, Lin Qingwan and I ended up choosing the same day for our weddings. On my wedding day, I boarded the wrong bridal sedan in confusion and ended up married into the Zhao family, while Lin Qingwan married into the Marquis's household. By the time the mistake was discovered, Lin Qingwan and Wang Lingrui had already completed their wedding ceremony, forcing me to accept the switched marriage and wed Zhao Huairan. Thinking of this, I discreetly had Lanxiang step out and summon Chuanxing to come in. Chuanxing was also my senior maid. However, in my past life, before my wedding, Chuanxing's elder brother and sister-in-law came to the Lin family to redeem her freedom. They said they'd found Chuanxing a good family, wanting her to leave the household and marry into happiness. Though reluctant at the time, I didn't wish to delay Chuanxing's marriage, so I prepared generous dowry gifts for her and released her from service to be wed. Yet several years later, when news of Chuanxing reached me again, I learned her brother and sister-in-law had married her off to become the concubine of an old landlord in his 50s. Within 2 years of that marriage, she'd been beaten to death and buried in the wilderness beyond the city outskirts. I feel so guilty, blaming myself for not properly vetting Chuanxing's situation and sending her into the tiger's den. This time, I won't let Chuanxing be deceived by her brother and sister-in-law. I will make sure they receive the punishment they deserve. After a while, Chuanxing walked in, carrying a plate of walnut cakes. Young lady, your nose is truly sharp. I had just finished making the walnut cakes when you urged me to bring them. Chuanxing handed me a walnut pastry while chatting and laughing. Chuanxing was 16, a year younger than me, steady and reliable by nature, utterly loyal to me. Had Chuanxing accompanied me to my wedding in my past life, the incident of entering the wrong bridal sedan would never have occurred. As I ate the walnut pastry she just made, waves of emotion rose within me. I instructed Chuanxing that during this period, she wasn't to leave the estate without my permission, but should stay properly within our courtyard. In her previous life, Chuanxing's brother and sister-in-law had taken advantage of her leaving the mansion to pester her into acknowledging their familial ties. This time, I'll make sure they never lay eyes on Chuanxing again. After the people from Xianping Marquis's household left, my father summoned me to his study, where Lady Han and Lin Qingwan were already seated. Shua, come sit here. Lady Han gestured eagerly for me to sit beside her. Seeing this mother-daughter pair, I struggled to conceal the hatred in my heart and calmly took my seat. Shua, today the Marquis of Xuanping's family came to propose marriage. The wedding date has been set for the 18th day of the 12th month, the same day as your sister's wedding. Having both my daughters married on the same day, I can finally give your mother a proper account. Her spirit in heaven will surely be comforted. Lady Han spoke first, dabbing at the non-existent tears at the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. Lin Qingwan also began wiping her tears. Watching their theatrical performance, I silently cursed myself for being such a fool in my past life. Seeing this scene, I foolishly got so moved that I hugged Lady Han and cried with her utterly irredeemable stupidity. Ahem, let's get to business. Shua, this is your birth mother's dowry list. All the dowry items are stored in the backyard warehouse. Have your mother help you properly sort through these dowry items and add them all to your own dowry. Father's light cough interrupted the performance of Madame Han and her daughter. Father was a man with a cold heart, yet he tried to maintain an appearance of fairness on the surface. He handed over mother's dowry to me, but he had Madame Han assist in organizing it. This way, when Madame Han distributed mother's dowry to Lin Qingwan, I would have no grounds to blame him if I didn't pursue the matter. Madam Han and Lin Qingwan, who benefited from it, would be grateful to him if I did pursue it. He could righteously shift the blame onto Madam Han. Either way, he would always appear to be a fair man. Father, since my sister and I are getting married on the same day, and mother has already worked so hard preparing her dowry, I truly can't bear to see her exhaust herself further by arranging mine. As for the dowry left by my late mother, let's entrust Aunt with organizing it. Aunt once mentioned that mother left instructions before her passing that when I marry, Aunt would handle my dowry arrangements. I believe Aunt wouldn't go back on mother's dying wish. Both father and Madam Han looked at me in astonishment upon hearing this, never expecting I'd be aware of such matters in my previous life. When my aunt learned that I had set a wedding date with the Marquis's household, she came specifically to prepare my dowry, mentioning that it was my mother's dying wish. However, in that lifetime, Lady Han didn't withhold my mother's dowry in order to arrange the marriage exchange, so I persuaded my aunt not to interfere and let Lady Han handle it. Seeing that Lady Han indeed didn't dare to embezzle my mother's remaining dowry, my aunt reluctantly agreed. Yet in the end, my entire dowry was sent to the Marquis's household and became Lin Qingwan's dowry. When I suggested reclaiming my dowry, my father flatly refused. You're the one who boarded the wrong bridal sedan. This is all your fault. Moreover, your sister married into the Marquis's household in your stead. These dowry items are only fitting for the wife of a Marquis's heir. Now that you've married a mere merchant, how could you possibly deserve such lavish dowry gifts? My father's cold indifference chilled me to the bone. This time, my dowry would accompany me to the Marquis's residence. No one would lay a finger on it. After some thought, father nodded in agreement. He knew full well that my maternal aunt had a fiery temperament. Once she intervened, no one could stop her. A flicker of resentment crossed Madam Han's face, though it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Within days, Aunt Xie arrived. Seeing her again, I couldn't hold back my tears. In my previous life, I married into the Zhao family, and not long after the wedding, I followed Zhao Huairan back to his ancestral home in Huizhou, 300 kilometers away. After that, returning to the capital was no easy task. For the first 2 years, Zhao Huairan would take me back to the capital whenever he had the opportunity to deliver tribute silk. In the following years, Zhao Huairan stopped bringing me along, and I could only focus on managing the household and serving my parents-in-law. From then on, I never saw my aunt again until she passed away. My aunt had always doted on me the most. When she learned about the marriage swap, she and my uncle made a special trip to the Zhao family. Only after confirming I was willing did they reluctantly leave. Shua, don't cry. Did the Han family bully you? Tell your aunt what's wrong, and I'll stand up for you. Seeing me cry so bitterly, my aunt turned to confront the Han family, but I quickly grabbed her sleeve. It's nothing, Auntie. Shua just missed you terribly after not seeing you for so long. This time everything can still be changed. I will alter all of this. I won't let family bonds turn into regret again. Under my aunt's forceful intervention, Madam Han had no choice but to hand over all that remained of my mother's dowry. Looking at the lengthy dowry list, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. These belongings of my mother's have finally returned to me this time. I must protect them well. In the blink of an eye, it's already November. Young mistress, this old servant has already sent someone to investigate the matter you entrusted us with last time. The speaker was Aunt's trusted servant Mama Chang. Quick, tell me, what kind of people are Chuanqing's brother and sister-in-law? I quickly signaled Mother Chang to close the doors and windows, then urged her to tell me quickly. This Chuanqing's brother, Hu San, is a petty thief and local ruffian. Back then, he sold Chuanqing precisely because he injured someone and needed money for compensation. Their parents died of anger because of him, and all these years he's been searching for Chuanqing's whereabouts. A few days ago, someone told him Chuanqing was in the Lin residence, so he's been lurking outside the Lin household these past few days. My heart skipped a beat when I heard that. For so many years, Hu San couldn't find any trace of Chuanqing, yet coincidentally, someone told him her whereabouts just a few days ago. Did you find out who told him Chuanqing was at the Lin residence? We did. It was one of the outer courtyard stewards of the Lin household. Suddenly, I understood everything. All of Chuanxing's misfortunes in our past life had been carefully orchestrated. After sending Chang Mama away, I looked at Chuanxing, who was attending to me, stepped forward, and hugged her tightly. Chuanxing looked puzzled but remained silent, letting me sob against her shoulder. A few days later, Husan, unable to wait any longer for Chuanxing to leave the house, finally came knocking on our door himself. After receiving the message, I invited Husan into the mansion and arranged for him to stay in a guest room in the rear courtyard. The rear courtyard guest rooms were typically where stewards from the front courtyard waited to be summoned. I had decorated the parlor with numerous small but valuable items. Sitting inside, Husan eyed these precious objects, his fingers itching uncontrollably. In the end, Husan didn't wait for Chuanxing, but instead made off with quite a few stolen items. Once Husan succeeded in his scheme, I had the steward report him to the authorities, and the officers caught him red-handed with the stolen goods at his home. Husan was beaten half to death by the officers and thrown into prison. He wouldn't see daylight again for years. I didn't tell Chuanxing about this. A scoundrel like Husan wasn't worth her thoughts. Better she believed him already dead. A few more days passed, and soon it would be the 12th lunar month. Just like in her previous life, Lady Han embroidered Lin Qingwan's wedding dress anew, making it identical to mine. After my wedding dress was finished, no one had seen it yet. It had always been in Lanxiang's care secretly. I watched as Lanxiang took my wedding dress to Lin Qingwan's side, allowing Lin Qingwan's embroiderers to copy the design. I didn't expose Lanxiang. Instead, I quietly hid the new wedding dress I had asked my aunt to purchase for me. Lanxiang had been sneaking out every evening lately to secretly meet with a young steward from the outer courtyard in the garden. The man was handsome and literate. Though young, he had already become a junior steward in the front courtyard. Many maidservants in the Lin household fancied him, and Chaoa from the main kitchen was one of them. Chaoa was the daughter of Nurse Zhong, Madame Han's personal attendant. As Nurse Zhong held such an influential position, Chaoa bullied other maidservants with impunity. No one dared cross her. In her previous life, Lanxiang followed Li Wanqing to the Marquis's residence, but not long after, she returned to the Lin household and married a minor steward from the front courtyard. Lanxiang, an ordinary-looking maid, managed to marry this handsome young steward. It seemed this was Hansha's promise to her. These past few days, I've used the excuse of craving pastries to have Chaoa personally deliver them to me in the evening. This time, taking advantage of Lanxiang and the steward's secret rendezvous in the garden, I had Chaoa bring over the pastries again. To reach my courtyard from the main kitchen, one had to pass through the garden. It was there that Chaoa happened to witness Lanxiang's secret rendezvous with the young steward. On her way back, never expecting anyone would dare steal her man, Chaoa immediately flew at Lanxiang, clawing fiercely until she left bloody scratches across Lanxiang's face. The commotion soon alerted Madame Han. When I saw Lanxiang's face covered in bloody gashes, I knew her beauty had been ruined. That young steward would never marry her now. I didn't plead for Lanxiang's sake, but instead interceded for Chaoa, asking Madame Han not to be too harsh on her. Mother, although Lanxiang is my chief maid, she dared to commit such disgraceful conduct as meeting a man secretly at midnight. I absolutely dare not plead for her mercy. Please punish her severely according to our family rules to serve as a warning to others. As for Chaoa, I beg you to be lenient. If I hadn't been greedy for snacks late at night and sent Chaoa to deliver pastries, she wouldn't have witnessed such filthy affairs. Chaoa is also a victim. Nanny Zhong looked at me gratefully. While Madame Han's face darkened, Madame Han had been waiting for me to plead for Lanxiang's sake, so she could gracefully give her an out and let the matter pass lightly. To her surprise, I showed absolutely no mercy and directly instructed her to punish Lanxiang according to the family rules. Madame Han hesitated. Surrounded by servants on all sides, any hint of unfairness in her handling would cast doubt on her long-standing reputation as household manager. If gossip-mongers spread word of this, the entire Lin family's reputation would become laughingstock among outsiders. She was already a second wife, subject to criticism. If she gained any more unfavorable reputation, she might truly be divorced by her father. After hesitating for a long time, Madame Han hardened her heart and ordered Lan Xiang to be caned 20 times before being sold out of the household. The minor steward was caned 20 times and banished to an outer estate, while Chaoer was penalized 3 months' wages upon hearing this. Lan Xiang collapsed to the ground, casting pitiful glances at me, unable to believe that I wouldn't plead for her. Recalling my past life, when Lan Xiang helped me board the wrong bridal sedan, betrayed me, and doomed me to a miserable existence, my gaze turned icy. Lan Xiang shivered under my cold stare, realizing I might have uncovered everything. Terrified, she turned to Madame Han, pleading desperately, "Madam, you can't treat me like this, I did it all for you." But before she could finish, Mema Zhong stepped forward and stuffed a rag into her mouth. Soon, Lan Xiang was stretched over a long bench, letting out continuous wails until her cries could no longer be heard. I watched as Lan Xiang received 20 strokes of the rod, left uncertain whether she was alive or dead, before returning to the courtyard satisfied. The next day, I heard from Chuanxing that Lan Xiang hadn't lasted until dawn. She had already breathed her last. Lan Xiang's death did nothing to disrupt the wedding preparations. Underway in the manor in the blink of an eye, the 18th day of the 12th lunar month arrived. The day of the wedding. Early in the morning, I was roused to begin dressing, with Madame Han sending her trusted attendant, Mother Li, to assist me. "Young mistress, your hair is done, it's time to put on your wedding dress." With those words, Mother Li went to fetch the wedding gown hanging in the room. I gave Chuanxing a meaningful glance, and she went to the inner room nearby, fetching a wedding dress with different embroidery patterns. "I'll wear this wedding dress." I walked toward Chuanxing and pointed at the dress in her hands as I spoke. Madame Li's face stiffened, and though she wanted to persuade me further, my icy gaze stopped her. After helping me into my wedding dress, Mema Li hurriedly left. I knew she was going back to report to Madame Han. I didn't stop her, but turned to instruct Chuanxing instead. "Chuanxing, today you must stay close by my side and see me onto the Marquis's bridal sedan." Chuanxing nodded resolutely, her gaze firm. "Some time ago, I told Chuanxing that I had a dream where I boarded the wrong bridal sedan by mistake and ended up marrying Zhao Huairan. Chuanxing thought I'd merely had a nightmare and vowed she wouldn't let such a horror come to pass on my wedding day. She'd stay by my side every moment. This comforted me greatly. Not long after, someone entered the courtyard. It was old Chen from the main kitchen, carrying 2 food boxes in her hands. "Young mistress, this is the 100 Suns Lotus Blessing Soup prepared by Madame's orders. She insists you must take at least 1 sip to receive its blessings." Old maid Chen opened a food box containing 2 bowls of lotus seed soup. She handed 1 bowl to me and passed the other to Chuanxing. "Miss Xing'er is fortunate too. As the young mistress's dowry maid, Madame specifically instructed that you should also have a bowl." Old woman Chen fawned at Chuanxing as she spoke. I frowned slightly and gave Chuanxing a meaningful look, but she didn't rush to drink it. In my past life, Madame Han had also prepared 2 bowls of lotus seed soup, but she only made me and Lin Qingwan drink it right before we boarded our bridal sedans. After drinking it, I sat in the swaying sedan chair feeling dizzy, and arrived at the Zhao family in a daze. This time, having me drink lotus seed soup so early. "There must be something wrong with this soup. Take this to second sister first. The lotus seed soup is still too hot. I'll drink it later." I glanced at another food box beside Granny Chen and set the bowl down. Dismissing her, Granny Chen froze, then quickly said, "This lotus seed soup has been simmering all night. It's not hot at all. Once eldest miss finishes it, this old servant can take the bowl back on the way." Saving another trip, I slammed the table, my face darkening, startling Granny Chen into retreating immediately. Only after Granny Chen had left did I instruct Chuanxing to summon the 2 maidservants from the courtyard, presenting them with these 2 bowls of lotus seed soup as rewards. Before long, the maidservant who drank Chuanxing's bowl of lotus seed soup clutched her stomach in pain and rushed straight to the outhouse. Surprisingly, the other maidservant who drank my bowl of lotus seed soup showed no signs of discomfort whatsoever. Chuanxing's face turned pale. Even if she were foolish, she knew now that there was something wrong with her bowl of soup. No wonder I hadn't let her drink it. I looked at Chuanxing, reached out to hold her hand, and reassured her not to worry. This time, I wouldn't let Lady Han succeed. The panic in Chuanqing's eyes gradually eased under my soothing. Before long, the clamor of gongs and drums erupted outside. The wedding processions of Marquis Xuanping's household and the Zhao family had arrived, dressed in bridal attire and holding fans. Lin Qingwan and I entered the grand hall to bid farewell to my father and Lady Han. Just like in my past life, Prince Wang Lingrui and I served tea to my father and Lady Han. My father offered me some conventional advice about serving my husband and raising children, while Lady Han gifted me a white jade bracelet. Next came the ritual of drinking the departure tea, symbolizing blessings and a woman leaving her family with purity intact. When the tea was presented, I deliberately took only a small sip. When I got up and moved aside, I realized that Chuanqing, who had been by my side all along, had suddenly disappeared. She had been replaced by an unfamiliar maid, and my heart tightened as I became fully alert. Soon after, a wave of dizziness washed over my mind. I immediately understood the tea earlier had indeed been tampered with. I pulled out the golden hairpin hidden in my sleeve and gently pricked my thigh. A sharp, intense pain jolted me awake momentarily. I gripped the golden hairpin, pricking my thigh with it from time to time to force myself to stay alert. Soon after, identical red bridal veils were placed over both Lin Qingwan's head and mine. After completing the elaborate departure rituals, we arrived at the main gate. At this moment, the unfamiliar maidservant beside me guided me toward the bridal sedan chair. I walked up to the bridal sedan but didn't enter immediately. I knew this maid must have brought me before the Zhao family's sedan. Just as I was about to lift the veil and expose everything, a familiar voice came through. Wait, the bride has boarded the wrong sedan. It was the voice of Prince Wang Lingrui. He had recognized me. The Marquis's bridal sedan is over there. After Wang Lingrui finished speaking, the maid beside me immediately took 2 frightened steps back. I lifted a corner of my red veil and met Wang Lingrui's gaze. Our eyes locked briefly before I gently lowered the veil and walked toward him. Upon recognizing me, Wang Lingrui wore an expression that said I knew it, yet he cast a puzzled glance at the maid behind me. When I walked back toward the Marquis's bridal sedan, the surrounding crowd seemed to finally snap out of their daze. Am I seeing things? That bride almost got into the wrong sedan. The Marquis of Xuanping's procession has 8 bearers and extravagant arrangements. How could the Lin family send the wrong bride? This is utterly absurd. Thankfully the heir noticed in time, or this could have been disastrous. I listened to the murmurs of the surrounding crowd as I slowly settled into the Hu Mansion's 8-man palanquin. Soon after, the Hu Mansion's wedding procession carried me away with gongs and drums sounding. Heading toward the mansion, I lifted the palanquin curtain and saw Madame Han standing at the main gate with a gloomy expression, while Lin Qingwan walked toward the Zhao family's bridal sedan chair. Turning back every few steps, I breathed a long sigh of relief. This time, I had finally changed the outcome from my previous life. At the Marquis of Xuanping's residence, Wang Lingrui helped me alight from the bridal sedan chair, and amidst the crowd's cheers, we completed the wedding ceremony. I was no longer the bashful maiden of my past life, sitting calmly in the bridal chamber. After what seemed like an eternity, the door creaked open as Wang Lingrui entered. May I see that ruby pendant at your waist? Wang Lingrui didn't rush to lift my bridal veil, but suddenly asked about the ruby pendant at my waist. I sighed softly, relieved that my gamble had paid off. This ruby pendant was no ordinary one. It was shaped like twin fish, head to tail, forming an unusual design. Legend had it that this ruby pendant was a love token between a princess and her consort from the previous dynasty. After surviving wars and turmoil, it eventually became part of my mother's dowry in my previous life. This ruby pendant became part of Lin Qingwan's dowry after being included in my own bridal trousseau. When Wang Lingrui saw this item among Lin Qingwan's dowry, he asked for it, but was firmly refused by Lin Qingwan. The reason Lin Qingwan refused was that after marrying into the Marquis's household, her husband Wang Lingrui had never consummated their marriage. As his heart already belonged to his beloved concubine Liu Rushuang, he wanted this ruby pendant precisely to gift it to Liu Rushuang. I deliberately wore this ruby pendant at my waist today just to catch Wang Lingrui's attention. To my surprise, Wang Lingrui did notice the ruby pendant and kept watching me. which was why he stepped in promptly to stop me from boarding the wrong bridal sedan. Without hesitation, I unfastened the ruby pendant from my waist and handed it to Wang Lingrui. Wang Lingrui was overjoyed and was about to reach for it when I spoke up. Young master, if you fancy this jade pendant, I shall gift it to you. However, my maidservant Chuanxing, who came with me as part of my dowry, has suddenly gone missing today. I'm deeply concerned for her safety and hope you could send someone to the Lin residence now to find her. This jade pendant is utterly useless to me, since Wang Lingrui helped me today. I'll give it to him as repayment for his favor, yet my primary concern remains Chuanxing's safety. Having him search for her should be a trivial matter for him as expected. Wang Lingrui accepted the pendant with delight and readily promised to find Chuanxing, but just as he turned to leave, he still uttered those words, that he wouldn't consummate our marriage and would instead stay overnight in Liu Rushuang's courtyard. Contrary to Wang Lingrui's expectations, I didn't make a scene but obediently agreed to everything. This gave Wang Lingrui a twinge of guilt toward me. Not long after, Chuanxing was brought to the Marquis's residence. Sure enough, while I was serving morning tea, Chuanxing was drugged unconscious and locked in the firewood shed. Seeing Chuanxing safe and sound finally put my mind at ease. This time, I'll properly be the heir's wife of the Marquis's household in her past life. Lin Qingwan only learned after marrying into the Marquis's household that Wang Lingrui had a beloved concubine named Liu Rushuang. Because Liu Rushuang was already 6 months pregnant, the Marquis's household had no choice but to propose marriage to the Lin family ahead of schedule. Liu Rushuang told everyone she would bear the Marquis's first son. This infuriated Lin Qingwan, who targeted Liu Rushuang at every turn. However, Lin Qingwan's petty inner household tactics were no match for Liu Rushuang, who hailed from the pleasure quarters in her 3rd year of marriage. Into the Marquis's household, Lin Qingwan was framed by Liu Rushuang and was divorced by the Marquis's family on charges of harming descendants. In the end, it was Zhao Huairan who secretly took Lin Qingwan in at his suburban residence near the capital, and so, Zhao Huairan and Lin Qingwan began their illicit affair. This time, I won't let myself fall for Wang Lingrui. I just want to be a proper wife to the heir and enjoy the life of wealth and privilege that was originally mine. 3 days later, it was time for the traditional bride's return to her parental home. For these 3 days, my mother-in-law, Lady Hu, has been extremely pleased with me and bestowed many fine gifts upon me. I completely ignored the provocations from the concubine Liu Rushuang, devoting myself wholeheartedly each day to serving my parents-in-law. This not only rendered all of Liu Rushuang's petty schemes against me ineffective but also earned her reprimands from my mother-in-law to plead for leniency toward his concubine. The heir Wang Lingrui agreed to accompany me back to my maiden home. I returned to my parents' home wearing the exquisite hair ornaments bestowed by my mother-in-law, dazzling from head to toe. Even Wang Lingrui couldn't take his eyes off me. When we arrived at the Lin residence, Lin Qingwan and Zhao Huairan hadn't returned yet. Hansha looked at my splendid hair ornaments and attire, forcing a strained smile while her eyes brimmed with resentment. I took in Hansha's expression with cold amusement, knowing full well that when Lin Qingwan returned, there would be quite a spectacle to witness. As expected, while we were sitting drinking tea, a servant came running in. "Master, the second young miss has returned alone." Immediately afterward, Lin Qingwan entered weeping and wailing. Only after Madame Han's repeated comforting did Lin Qingwen finally speak. "Mother, this Zhao Huairan is nothing but a swindler. The Zhao family lost their status as imperial merchants even before the marriage proposal was made. Now Zhao Huairan wants to sell their suburban mansion and take your daughter back to his ancestral home in Huizhou. Your daughter refuses to leave the capital, refuses to leave her parents." Lin Qingwan wept bitterly, her face streaked with tears, while Madame Han turned pale with shock, never imagining the Zhao family had fallen so low. "The reason we chose the Zhao family in the first place was because they held the status of imperial merchants. Not only were they immensely wealthy, but they also had powerful backing at court. Who would have thought that in the end, we would be the ones tricked by the Zhao family?" Lin Qingwan wept and then looked pitifully at Wang Lingrui. Wang Lingrui frowned, his eyes showing not a trace of tenderness or sympathy. He immediately turned to his father and said that there were matters at the Marquis's estate that required his attention, then insisted on taking me back with him. Of course, I did not go against his wishes. After bidding farewell to my father, I quickly followed Wang Lingrui out. As I turned to leave, I caught Lin Qingwan casting a venomous glare my way, as if resenting why it wasn't me who married into the Zhao family in my past life. When I married into the Zhao family, Zhao Huairan confessed the family's predicament to me on our wedding night. He vowed that if I returned to Huizhou with him, within 3 years he would surely help the Zhao family reclaim their status as imperial merchants. I believed his promise and followed him willingly from the capital, helping him purge domestic traitors, outwit the second branch and half-brothers, and establish family prestige. She even personally visited her uncle at the Ministry of Revenue to seek help, connecting the Zhao family with the princess's estate. Within 3 years, she actually managed to restore the Zhao family's status as imperial merchants. But who could have imagined that in this very year, Zhao Huairan secretly began an affair with Lin Qingwan, who had been divorced by the Marquis's household behind my back. The two lived together discreetly in the capital, leaving me alone in Huizhou to care for his parents and manage the entire Zhao household. It wasn't until 3 years later, when I fell gravely ill from exhaustion and was nearing death, that he finally returned. At this time, Lin Qingwan was also pregnant. They wanted to poison me so that Lin Qingwan could openly become the legitimate wife and their child could be the rightful heir. This time, I didn't enter the wrong bridal sedan nor marry into the Zhao family. Zhao Huairan can forget about easily reclaiming his status as imperial merchant. Returning to the Marquis of Shuamping's residence, I devoted myself to serving my parents-in-law and soon gained control of the household management. Wang Lingrui still doted on Liu Rushuang excessively, and I also instructed the servants to take good care of her. And so, Liu Rushuang soon reached her delivery date. After enduring labor for a full day and night, she finally gave birth to a son, bringing the Marquis's household its first heir. However, due to complications during childbirth, Liu Rushuang suffered physical damage that made intimate relations with Wang Lingrui increasingly difficult. Gradually, Wang Lingrui stopped favoring Liu Rushuang exclusively, and the number of concubines in the rear courtyard began to multiply. I sneered inwardly, as expected. A man's enduring devotion simply doesn't exist. Liu Rushuang, neglected day after day by Wang Lingrui, developed a heart ailment and soon passed away. I took in the son she had struggled to give birth to and raised him as my own, registering him under my name with a child by my side. My position as the wife of the heir was firmly secured. Under my management, all the concubines in the rear courtyard became thoroughly obedient. On Lin Qingwan's side, after making several scenes, she ultimately followed Zhao Huairan back to Huizhou. However, the pair who had secretly carried on in their previous lives now shared no affection whatsoever. During this time, under the guise of a powerful noble from the capital, I covertly reached out to the second branch of the Zhao family, helping them forge numerous connections with influential figures. In their past life, the second branch of the Zhao family had been ambitious, constantly seeking control over the family's authority. Now, with my support behind the scenes, Zhao Huairan would undoubtedly find himself beset by enemies in the business world in the blink of an eye. Less than a year later, Lin Qingwan returned to the capital. It turned out that Zhao Huairan had asked her to seek her father's help in smoothing relations with the Ministry of Revenue to exchange a batch of raw silk prepared by the ministry for tribute. Under Lin Qingwan's pleading, her father agreed to the matter. When I heard about this, I sneered inwardly. In my past life, this batch of silk had a unique color but suffered from a fatal flaw. It was difficult to dye. A traitorous servant around Zhao Huairan had colluded with outsiders, deliberately setting him up. In my previous life, I obtained advance information from my uncle in the Ministry of Revenue. Not only did I prevent this incident from happening, but I also made the second branch of the Zhao family take on this mess, completely dragging them down so they could never recover. I also followed the clues and uncovered the traitor hiding by Zhao Huairan's side. My father didn't get along with my uncle and usually had no contact with him, so naturally he didn't know there were problems with this batch of tribute-bound raw silk. Soon after Zhao Huairan acquired this batch of silk, it caused huge losses for the Zhao family and made them miss the launch of their new satin products. Zhao Huairan was isolated by his Zhao clan relatives, while the second branch of the family seized the opportunity to demand division of household assets, pushing the Zhao family to the brink of disintegration. Mother Zhao blamed all this misfortune on Lin Qingwan, calling her a jinx who had brought nothing but bad luck to the Zhao family since her marriage into the household. Before long, Mother Zhao pressured Zhao Huairan to divorce Lin Qingwan in this lifetime. Zhao Huairan, who had never harbored much affection for Lin Qingwan to begin with, didn't hesitate. With a single letter of divorce, he cast Lin Qingwan aside. After being divorced, Lin Qingwan returned to the capital alone, only to encounter bandits on the way, vanishing without a trace ever since. Upon hearing this news, Lady Han fainted from grief and passed away shortly after from illness. A year later, the second branch of the Zhao family took over the Huizhou properties and drove Zhao Huairan out of Huizhou. Zhao Huairan returned to the capital and opened a silk shop there, but his business never took off. I heard this silk fabric shop has terrible feng shui. Whenever business starts picking up, either the storefront catches fire or the roof leaks, with strange incidents happening constantly. One day, I stopped my carriage and walked into Zhao Huairan's silk fabric shop, where a shrewd-looking man with triangular eyes quickly came forward to greet me. "Madam, please come inside. What kind of silk fabric would you like?" Looking at the clerk's demeanor, I suddenly realized the spy planted by the imperial merchant Wu family beside Zhao Huairan had never been rooted out. This was precisely why Zhao Huairan could never make his comeback. My heart was filled with melancholy, perhaps compared to letting Zhao Huairan die outright, stripping him of the ability to restore the Zhao family's status as imperial merchants. For life would torment him more than death. 2 more years passed, and I found a compatible junior steward for Chuanxing within the Marquis's household, arranging her marriage. The heir, Wang Lingrui, had also matured, no longer indulging in the concubines of the inner courtyard, and had become a deputy commander in the city defense battalion, accompanying my mother-in-law, the Marquise, to various social gatherings in the capital. I became a veritable noblewoman of the city. This is the life I truly deserve to enjoy. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.